Hi again then guys, and welcome to the 92nd episode of B-Road Ballers, and this time we're featuring the first foray into Gran Turismo Sport for this series. For those who are perhaps new to this series, this is a series covering the hot hatches and also the sleeper hatchbacks of the Gran Turismo franchise, predominantly GT6. We are going to be revisiting some older games like GT2 to cover some of those cars, but now we're taking, as I said, our first steps into the foray of hot hatches on Gran Turismo Sport. Now, there are a couple of different hot hatches to choose from, but some of them we won't be reviewing again because we've already reviewed them in GT6, such as the Renault Megane RS. So although you could say it's revised, it's the same essential car, so there's not really any need to review it again. This version, however, is not just the GT Sport version of the same car, it is a genuinely new model, because currently on GT6 we have the 2013 Ford Focus ST. This, though, is the 2015 version. Now, it doesn't look radically different to the existing model. It's more subtle changes in terms of the headlights, the grille, the rear bumper, that kind of thing. And when you actually put the cars next to each other, you can quite clearly see those differences. If you look at them separately, though, they do look pretty similar, it has to be said. So the question is, with the limited tuning options that we currently have on GT Sport, what is this car like to drive? How does it compare to the existing Ford Focus ST that we already have, albeit without tuning? Because of course the current Focus can be tuned up to almost 500 horsepower, it's a very quick hot hatch, and it's a very popular one. So will this car be the same? Bearing in mind, of course, that this is from the beta. Now, will this car be as good or as popular? In terms of popularity, I think it probably will be as popular because people just seem to absolutely love the Ford Focus ST. Personally, I don't have that same level of love for it. I like the RS, but not so much the ST. So what do you actually get? Well, so far we don't know what the price of the car is going to be. You win it, as with all of the other cars on the beta. The engine is a 2 litre, a 1999cc, so literally just 1cc off being a perfect 2 litre capacity. Of course, it's a straight 4 turbocharged engine, and you're looking at good numbers. In peak form in the garage, discounting of course balance of performance, because when balance of performance comes in, it basically makes all of the cars in the race essentially the same in terms of power and weight. So if you disregard that and just take the car with its raw numbers in effect in the garage that's unaltered by balance of performance and working it at its peak, what kind of numbers are you looking at? Well, it's an N300 class vehicle, and as such, of course, you'd expect it to have somewhere under or somewhere over 300 horsepower. And it does. You've got 284, and interestingly, peak power arrives at only 5,500 RPM. So that's pretty good. It's accessible power. You don't have to rev the engine to an extreme to wring the most power out of it. That power's ready and available for you. More of a mid-range power curve, which for technical circuits is quite good. It means that you've got that power on tap without really having to push the car that much. The disadvantage of that, especially with a front-wheel drive chassis, is of course torque steer. And speaking of torque, this car has quite a bit of it. 305 foot-pounds at only 2,500 RPM. Again, nice low-end to mid-range meaty power and torque. But the disadvantage of that, as I mentioned, is that torque steer. Now, with the length of the vehicle being a 5-door hatch, that doesn't really help, because many hot hatches which do have torque steer from high power in a small front-wheel drive layout typically overcome that by being small, compact and lightweight. With this car, though, you don't really have that advantage because it's not small, it's not light, and it's not compact. It's a pretty big car as far as hatchbacks go, especially being a 5-door model, as of course the RS model now also is as well. And it's not light, it weighs 1,432 kilos. Now you need to bear in mind, of course, comparing that to the current Focus ST, that we can of course significantly lower the weight of that Focus ST thanks to the pretty hefty weight loss program, which you can apply to a lot of production models on Gran Turismo 6 and on plenty of other Gran Turismo games to precede it. Now, we may well end up being able to do those things to this car, but for now at least, These are the basic numbers that you're looking at, basically the straight out of the box numbers that you can expect. And in terms of horsepower per tonne, it doesn't necessarily sound that impressive, again because of the fact that we are reviewing essentially a stock vehicle here and comparing it to tuned cars on GT6. So an output of 198 horsepower per tonne doesn't sound that impressive, considering that some of the other cars that we usually talk about, even only in sports car classes or hot hatch or even sports saloon type vehicles, are looking at 300, 400, 500 horsepower per tonne. Some go even higher, of course, once you start talking race cars, supercars, and that level of machine. This one doesn't have anywhere near that, because in comparison, the power is lower and the weight is higher, so of course it's not going to sound that great. So the question is, what's it like to drive? Is it different to the Focus? Is it improved? Is it worse? How does it compare to GT6? Well, of course, the handling physics are different. They have been updated slightly. I like the handling on the game more since the 1.05 update, and it's a similar vehicle, as you'd expect it to be, to the 2013 Focus. Now, although it's similar, there are differences. I would say that the handling on the 2013, again, with GT6's handling physics, feels a little bit lighter on its feet. Regardless of tuning, I'm talking stock versus stock. That being said, this car does have more power, so whether or not it would be faster were both cars on the game, that would be interesting to find out. It would depend on the track. Any track which allows this car to use that power and torque advantage, I would give this car just that, the advantage. On a track which doesn't allow for that, I think I might give the 2013 car the edge, because this car feels a little weightier through the corners, and that low-end torque, as great as it is, can work against you. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.